going to have a book launch today for AI Leadership for Boards, the Future of Corporate Governance. And I just wanted to start with, if you can recognize who this is. So this gentleman is Frank Maisman. He's actually, or he was, the chairman of a 178-year-old travel conglomerate, Thomas Cook, with last year a turnover 9.6 billion and 20,000 employees. And on September 23rd, they filed for bankruptcy. So our ambition with our research and the book is that we like to inspire boards and owners and investors to take care of their company's future and more safely guide them into the increasingly digital world. So the agenda for today is that we are going to introduce ourselves as authors. Then we are going to talk a bit about the challenge, and we will have some fantastic collaborators and guests joining us on that. We're then going to talk about the research, some of the myths that we had from the beginning, and some of our results. Then we'll interact with you as audience, and we're going to go through some of the focus areas that we recommend that boards are focused on, and some of the board questions that we are recommended that boards are using. And then we're going to talk a bit about the book, and then we'll have a bit of dialogue with ourselves in the end. Now, as we are very modern, we do have a mod. What do you do as a mod, Fernanda?
Well, I feel very powerful in my mod role. Mod stands for moderator. It's a gaming kind of term. So what I will be doing is doing my best to moderate this session. So kind of taking over here over the chat. And what I'll be doing is collecting the questions for the Q&A session in the end of the presentation. But it would be super cool if everyone, could share comments and insights, because we really want to make this a learning experience and a sharing knowledge experience. For now, as we've said before, it would be great if you could just write in the chat where you are coming from.
Thank you so much. So let's just introduce ourselves as authors. And we're three co-authors for this, and we start with Fernanda. So Fernanda, what is your focus and why do you think this is an important topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself have two board mandates, one of them working with an organization connected to innovation management, and another organization very close to my heart, connected to the Portuguese community here in Sweden. I'm Portuguese from background. So that's kind of one of the hats that I have. Another hat that I have is the researcher that you will see here. And you will learn all about the research that we've done, and that this book is part of the results that we are getting out of this research. And then my third hat is really helping organizations in their transformation journey through innovation management, using creative techniques from my background as a designer, design thinking, future thinking. And I also do a lot of teaching within that framework in the Stockholm School of Economics, in the Stockholm School of Entrepreneurship, Hyper Island. So in different contexts, but always with this transformation focus. What about you, Robin? Who are you?
Yeah, who am I? Why am I here? Yes, hello all, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Robin Tegiland, and I'm a professor of Management of Digitalization and Strategy at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. Originally from the US, though, I have a background in consulting working for McKinsey. And prior to that, I was also at the Stockholm School of Economics, where I was sat on their board of directors. Currently, I'm on the board of Akademiska Hus, which is Sweden's largest real estate company. So working a lot in terms of looking into the future of higher education and how universities are becoming very much a center for a whole new type of society where we're moving into lifelong learning, and how can university campuses open up and work differently. So this is one of the main areas I'm working in. in addition to that, what I'm really trying to do is focus very much on understanding artificial intelligence and within a certain application area, which is the ocean. So I'm the director of Ocean Data Factory Sweden, where we are using AI, machine learning, deep neural networks, etc., to applying it to ocean data to solve many of our wicked problems that we have out there related to pollution, related to overfishing, etc. So I do a lot of activity in that, really to get my hands on to the understanding how artificial intelligence, how we actually are applying it. And I think through that, that's really enabled me to understand issues at the board level so much better, how we really need to work on creating an understanding of artificial intelligence and what we'll be getting into our research. Final thing is that I am also an impact entrepreneur in Portugal, where I am a co-founder and managing a company called Ocean Tech Hub, where we are working with the digitalization of small coastal communities and enabling a blue circular economy. So we're building on old industries and injecting them with new digital and emerging technologies to create a blue circular economy. So a few different hats there. Thanks. And Liselotte, yeah.
Okay,
Please.
so I also want to extend my warm welcome to all of you there. And I actually know that I have some fellow board colleagues also joining us today. My main focus is I'm a professional board member, so I work on 3 listed companies headquartered in 3 different countries and all with multi-country operations or international operations. I also work on private equity-owned companies, and I work on some educational institution boards. I'm delighted that we can have this discussion. And one of my thoughts and ambitions is that coming into board work, which I have now been doing for more than 10 years actually, I can feel that we really need to revisit how are we doing board work and what do we need to know as directors. And that's one of my passions going into this. So we're going to go directly to talk a bit about what is the challenge on this. And Fernanda, can you help us and guide us through that discussion?
Yeah, absolutely, Liselotte. So we have really gone through a lot of research, both academic and practitioner-oriented research. And we want to share some of the highlights of that research with you and really try to wrap our heads around, you know, why is this important and what's coming our way kind of thing. So this is a survey from the National Association for Corporate Directors in the US. And in this case, they were looking at a public company governance survey. And they were actually actively asking directors the 5 trends with the biggest impact on the next 12 months, so very short term. And this was actually before the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and already then disruption, cybersecurity. So mainly threats connected to technology were really on the corporate board's minds. And what's interesting is that, as we all know, the pandemic has really accelerated even more these threats as a lot of firms had to fast forward their AI programs, their digitalization, etc. So what we see is that boards are interested in dealing with technology, and they are threatened by the technology conversions. So this is on their minds. And looking a bit more into depth, so DigiOcean has already been conducting surveys and gathering data already since 2012, which is super interesting. And now if we look specifically at business capability, digital business capability, comparing the numbers from 2012 to now to 2018, it's interesting that the level is the same, right? Corporate directors feel that 39% of them feel that they have the right digital business capability. But if we look at the leadership capability for digital, we actually see that there is a decrease from 2012 to 2018, which is kind of troubling. You know, are our leaders getting worse? Well, we don't think so. We just think that the world is getting faster. So this is a moving target. And we feel that one of the reasons that it's so hard for leadership to do this, if you can pass the slide, Liselotte, has to do with a problem of alignment. So boards and management are not aligned when it comes to the importance of AI. In this study, you can look here at the data from Sweden, which is in blue, and there in pink to the right, you have data from 15 European markets. And that what we see is that there's a misalignment when it comes to the importance of AI. And that there is misalignment already in Sweden, but this is even worse if we look at the rest of Europe. Interesting enough, there's less of a misalignment within executive management, but there's definitely when we look into board of directors. And okay, aren't board directors worried about this? What are they doing? Well, they are, and they want more time to discuss these topics. So if we look here on the x-axis, looking at the frequently discussed topics, we see that topics like compliance, regulation, risk management, but we see that boards also want more time to discuss other topics such as cybersecurity, data and technology impact, strategy, disruption, etc. What we think it's relevant, it's not only about the question of time, but also asking boards, are boards discussing this with the right competence and the right structure to guarantee results? It's not just a question of time, but are they doing it right? Which we think it's actually a very interesting point of connection with the research work from Stephanie Werner, that is our guest, and she's here on the call today. It's fantastic to have such a luxurious guest with us, and she can tell you all about her research.
So my colleagues, Peter Weil, Tom Appel, and Jenny Banner and I, we decided that it was important to look at the role of boards in helping companies with digital disruption. And so we decided to do a study on the digital savviness of boards. We did a machine learning of bios of board directors. Now, this is a US study because we could easily get the bios from the boards. And when we did a survey of board directors themselves, we found that 62% of major company boards consider themselves digitally savvy. But if we looked at the research that we did, only 24% of the boards were digitally savvy. But the reason that this is important is it makes huge differences in terms of firm performance. We found they were really just striking differences. Companies with digitally savvy boards had 38% higher income growth. They had 34% higher ROA and 34% higher market growth. And what we really found was the difference, the kneecap point where things really changed was having 3 digitally savvy board members. So you didn't have to have a full board being digitally savvy to have a digitally savvy board. The real change came when you had 3, and it could be 3 out of 6, it could be 3 out of 15, but when you had 3, that created a core of people that could go and discuss the issues and help lead and develop other board members. Now, one of the things that we decided to do this last year was to see if we could replicate this with top management team members, and we're getting ready to publish this. We do have a research briefing on our website if you're interested. And what we found is actually even fewer of the top management teams were digitally savvy. And one of the things that I think is important for boards is that when we looked at, say, CEOs, only 24% of the CEOs were digitally savvy. Now, that's within the realm, within kind of, looking at bios, but still having a digitally savvy CEO makes a huge difference to your company. And this is something that I think that boards want to be aware of.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Fantastically interesting. And we're so glad that we can collaborate and get to deep dive even more into the areas. Now, Robin, can you, as the academic leader of this project, tell us a bit about the actual research project, some of the myths that we actually were encountering from the beginning, and some of the results?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yes, so what we saw is that there really is a need to conduct this research at the board level. If you think about all the research that's being done today, what we found was the majority was looking at operational. So how are firms actually, say, trying out artificial intelligence? How might they be thinking about their data? But it was very much at the operational level. We could not find any research really at the board level, and we were just speaking about Stephanie's research. But beyond that, there was very, very limited. So what we found is, okay, let's create a project. And we started this project about, about a year and a half ago. And it's with funding from Vinova. And what we've done is, in order to really have access, which I think is so important for this, we've been very heavily working together with several companies, such as Combient, which is a company here in Sweden that really works has a large group of organizations as part of their network, one of which is Epiroc. And so there we've been working with Ronnie Letton as well as Mats Ogilvy from these companies. At FCG as well, we have Christian Bensner. So here, very, working with these companies very directly. And then in connections to INSEAD, we have Helen Pitcher here, Steffi from MIT. So really trying to bring together academia with industry. So next slide, please. So in order for us to obtain our objective is really trying to understand what are the best practices we have within boards today, how can we document them, how can we develop them. We've really looked into how should we be collecting data. And we've done quite a bit of data collection. What you see here is an overview of what we've been doing, where we've done quite a few surveys. 800 people through DigOcean. We have ourselves done just another survey with 105 people who responded. Just recently, you see 75% of these 105 people were chairs, non-executive director, board members, with only 7% of CEOs, 4% owners, and 50% were other support. And these people came primarily from Sweden. However, we do also have international respondents. In addition, we've had several workshops where we've been working in interactive discussions with more than 150 people, deep dive interviews with AI experts, as well as board members, and 25 chair interviews through the project together with INSEAD. And as mentioned, we also are active ourselves on boards, giving us a much better insight into really what are the challenges. And then Fernanda started us off talking about our systematic academic and practitioner literature review. So this was very much kind of our data. And from this, we'll show you just a very brief overview of our results. What we see is very much this myth. We found out people think about AI and boards, and in the future, it's going to be, oh, it'll help us with decision making. We'll have an AI as a board member, and we have a few examples. But what we really found is that, we really need to start looking at what is happening today. And we see that there is already AI being used on boards, such as within areas of governing it. How is it being actually used within the organization, put into practice, say within innovation, as well as the supervision, say what do we know anything about the black box. We found some examples clearly with the big tech companies that are AI based, moving from the US, also China, and then seeing how it's been spreading across IT firms and even into industry. Just quickly, what we see is people, when in a survey by Accenture, seeing that 84% of those answering of CEOs saying we really do need AI for growth, and say that 75% we're going to be out of business if we don't do anything with this and take it to scale. So seeing a need, but what have we actually found? Through our interviews and analysis of all our data, we've seen there's two areas. Most tend to focus on the supervision of the governance. So how are we actually supervising, say, this black box? But what many often then tend to think about, well, what about this AI operational capability? Are we actually facilitating the guidance of how AI is being put into place in our firm? Are we thinking about are we enabling, facilitating the organization and top management to think about the data strategy management? How can we use AI and innovation? How can we develop our digital business ecosystem? What we found is while some people are thinking about the supervision and some people are thinking about the operational, very few companies were thinking about both. And you really do need both, as we'll get into. So next slide, please. In our surveys, what we found is that if we take first our thinking about guidance, so how are firms actually guiding the AI operational capability? 55% of those who answered were saying that they're not even doing this in action. They're not active, or maybe they have some plan, but they're not active on this. And in 3 years, 38% are still saying, we're not even going to be working with this either. So this is a bit shocking and a bit scary if we think about how it's really becoming so important to understand artificial intelligence and understand how we can guide this operational capability. Okay, next slide, please. The other major area that boards need to be working with is supervising AI governance. And here we found 63% of boards were not even active in supervising. And in 3 years, still only a third are not even thinking about being active in the supervision of AI governance capability, supervising the data, how and the ethical concerns, supervising what's going on in these black boxes, thinking about cybersecurity, and what about leading the digital ecosystem. So if we go to the next slide, what we found is putting this all together. I think what's important is thinking as a firm, in our boards, are we actually active? Where are we on some type of scale in terms of guiding the firm's operational AI capability versus the supervision of this AI governance capability? We see is now in those who responded that it's really not become a board issue yet, as we saw, not active in planning. And then moving on to the future, still just not, just becoming operational. But however, if we go to the next slide, what we see is, well, if we compare board members with the chair, we actually see the chair people have a much higher ambition, especially in terms of supervising. This is a very brief overview of some of our results. And so we'll get more into how you as individuals and board members can work with these different issues. So if we go to the next slide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Robin. Actually, now it's your turn. We'd like to do a bit of polling here at the webinar. So I'm launching a poll. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So it's 6 questions and it's related to our discussions here. So we'd like for you to think about one or an average, but preferably one company that you are aware of and your perspective on, first, if your board and leadership is actively guiding the data strategy and management. Secondly, if your board is active in guiding on the AI-based innovation, so where to apply the innovation. Thirdly, if your board and leadership is actively guiding the development of the digital business ecosystem. Then we'd like for you to think a bit about the supervision. So do you think your company is active on guiding and supervising on the ethics and the black box decision making, and on the cybersecurity, and then finally on the leadership of the digital business ecosystem? So I'll give it a short while to answer on that, and maybe I can just pull a question then of Stephanie meanwhile. How do you see these facts that we found matching with your research?
They actually match quite well. One of the things that we did, we started researching boards probably, I would say 5 years ago. And we found that most boards were in the what we would call a defensive. We found 3 roles for boards when we talked to board members, and we found that most boards were quite comfortable in what we call defensive, really focusing on cybersecurity issues, focusing on audit, focusing on really kind of protecting the organization. Then we found some boards were thinking about, well, let's look at oversight of, major transformation projects. And then there were fewer boards that were working on what we called strategic issues. And it really became clear that boards were going to have to move beyond the defensive and more into more of the strategic types of issues, because digital technology, they're all putting real pressure on the boards. And then the other thing that we did find was that if you were looking at financial performance, turns out that oversight of major transformation projects is sort of in between. It's kind of an evolutionary step. And when it came right down to it, where the board's work mattered in terms of financial performance was correlated with their defensive work and their strategic work, but not the oversight of the major transformation projects. So it seems that that's just a stage where you have to get to kind of get up to the strategic level.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I'm now ending the poll and I'm going to share back the results. So on the first one, we can see that a bit more than 50% kind of agree that their leadership and management is guiding, and the rest is looking a bit more neutral. We have to say, we're going to come back to that, but we think that this is probably the core area where companies need to start and do more. Then looking into the guiding of where to apply, you can see the spread is a bit even from agree to disagree. I think we would find the same also in the guidance of the digital business ecosystem. And here we actually got a lot of good input from our collaborating companies, where they see the challenge going forward as a board. How do you guide further and further out in the business ecosystem? The supervising around the black box thing, one of the things we found here, which I think is really interesting, is that most boards and leaders think about the algorithms they are developing themselves. They don't think about all of the algorithms that they are using from others, but they're still responsible for. We're going to come back to examples of that. And here on the cybersecurity, we can see that we have started to move. So we have almost 60% that is guiding the cybersecurity. And on the last one, I think we have a bit of even balance in taking the leadership forward on that. So let's move forward and look a bit at these focus areas. And one of the things that we have developed through the research and that we have included in the book is a set of questions that boards can use and pick up to actually guide the work, to help them to move forward in both guiding and supervising. So we'll show you how it works. We'll take some examples. So we have examples around companies that have started. In this case, it's Husqvarna, and they are into garden products and they're into construction products, and they wanted to move into services. They added sensors to their products, and very quickly because they realized they didn't own the data, but very quickly they also realized that they could extend their services to not just their own products, but any products, so that they were actually moving the total service, not just for the company itself to take care of where it many times starts, but actually for the customer to get much more value out of that. The adding things on other types of information. So this is data from a geographical dimension, where obviously now it's used a lot in terms of the pandemic, but also companies like Husqvarna can use it, for instance, to pick up what is the weather like, what will that implication be, so that you can prepare and also help the customers in a totally different way. So in that, we have developed a set of questions. These are just examples, but one of the things we see is that currently most boards are not really guiding their companies for the future data that they need. They are looking very much at the current data. And they're also looking very much at their own data. And the finding is that they need to look more towards combination of data, so use other sources of data. We have we're going to move into a totally different ways of looking at innovation, and one of them is very human. So we just wanted to show you that there is a marketplace where you can actually hire digital employees now, which is really interesting. And of course, it didn't start like that. It started in a way where they were operating to actually collect back. But it's also giving people a different perspective on how they can use innovation. So we think the combination of human and data will make a big difference. And also using insights from totally other areas that you weren't planning from the beginning to use it from. And these are X-rays actually from the analysis of the pandemic, where they have now found a way where they can use AI to actually predict both the way to use the health system in a much better way. So we think that the identification of user examples will be really important to learn, and where board have a much more important role to play than they actually maybe thought from the beginning, but also making sure that the board is actually asking for the incremental learning of AI experiments. And to develop the ecosystem, I don't know how many of you know the company Unity, but it's the largest company in the world that is developing a platform for AR and VR games. So maybe your kids will know about it. But the interesting thing that happened this autumn is that they have now fully moved into getting their platform and services to be used by industries. So now you can take data from design, or you can take data from business information models if you're in construction, load it into the system, get the structure up, change it in a visual gaming way, and then just move it back in again. And that will make a very big difference for those industries starting to use that. So one of the things that we believe that companies need to think about is to guide their organizations much more the complex relations that is going to come out for this, but also continuously monitor, are there different ways to actually look at the situation. Moving over to the supervise, most have heard about the challenge with the Amazon and their recruitment issues using AI, where it actually ended up being quite prejudiced. But what most people don't know is that there are many large organizations are actually using similar solutions through other solutions, like in this case, HireVue, which is actually using a very similar technology. And this is one of the examples where most companies are not aware that they're already using algorithms, even if they didn't develop it themselves, and then they're still responsible for it. And of course, the debate is very much now up on the tracing algorithms that's coming along. So one of the things that most companies are not doing, actually not even the banks. You could think that banks would be very proactive in this, but they are keeping a register of the AI-used applications, mostly in the area where they're regulated, not in the full area. And for instance, they're not regulated in HR, so they don't have a register that they might actually use a recruiting software. So we think that is something that will have to be supervised. And also the understanding on how the algorithms are transparent and reviewed and what risk the company is taking in that perspective. On the cybersecurity, there's many cases of companies. This is AdTech. They are working with 120 companies all over the world. 80 of their companies were taken down by a ransom attack. We also can see that there's a number of new types of support that is coming in. And this is HackerOne, which is a company which has 600,000 hackers, which are guided through incentives by both defense organizations, companies, to actually find the hole for them. And the picture here is of a young gentleman who's 21 years old, and he earned more than $1 million last year, if you want to think about new occupations. We think that the governance is definitely to think about a strategic assessment, not a technical assessment of, or not only a technical assessment of the cyber risk. And since most of your challenges in established companies will come through your employees, we think that the integration between HR and technical side will have to be monitored from the board. Finally, we think that there will come up a number of digital ecosystems where they're collaborating around learning about new transformation and learning about and developing new solutions. And Combient, as we work with, is an example of that. We also have examples of putting out innovation challenges where you use a bigger crowd to actually help you solve problems and you incentivize that. So we think that's going to come up. We think boards need to supervise how you're building up and contributing to society in a different way, but also monitor how are your partners actually complying to the areas. Fernanda, over to you and the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Super exciting.
Before that, I don't know.
I was going to say that.
Helen made it on. Yes, you're here, Helen.
I'm here. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was on mute and video off. Not helpful.
Thank you so much. So Helen is the president of or chairman of a number of companies, and she's kind enough to actually review our work and our book. So maybe you can just give us a reason. Why did you offer this very kind endorsement for our book?
Basically, because I think this is a hugely important topic for all of the boards that I'm on, and is also an important topic for all of our membership within IDM. So I was particularly interested to see it. I find in one of my businesses, we do board evaluations, and the knowledge of digital is not that high, the knowledge of AI and what it can do. There are lots of, as was said previously, myths out there as to what it means, particularly lots of fears as to what it can do. So having something that is a very practical, pragmatic guide and points directors towards the sorts of questions they need to be asking is, I think, really, really key and really helpful, because this whole topic, as I say in my review, we're a changing world. The whole topic of ESG is changing. The environment and climate has improved somewhat since none of us can travel and fly, but the societal implications are coming much more to the fore. So the more companies can make use of the right tools, upskill their people, take a look at connectivity in a way that doesn't necessarily mean we all have to be in a room, is really key. And again, it was mentioned earlier that the whole COVID thing had basically kicked us up not just one gear, but many, many gears in terms of how we work. And I know that in some of the organisations I'm responsible for, I was being told constantly, we cannot change working practices. And suddenly we've done it, and we did it virtually overnight. Yeah. So this book for me will upskill boards, because at the end of the day, boards have oversight and they're there to ask key and very good questions. But if they don't know what they don't know, they can't ask those questions. So I also agree with the comment, if you've got 3 people on the board who are savvy in this area, a bit like if you have 3 women on a board, then you get much more momentum behind the whole topic. But the rest of the board can't just abrogate their responsibilities in this area. They really need to find ways of upskilling themselves so as they understand the key risks and key questions and key motivators and drivers to take things forward. So that's why I was prepared to read the book literally from cover to cover and write the review that I did, because I think it's an excellent book, and you should, all of you, be congratulated for it.
Thank you so much, Helen. It means the world to us.
Thank you.
Fernanda,
yeah. Before we move on, I just need to. I have to say that I was so impressed to have Catherine Mironok with us on the call also, because she's in California right now, which means it's like super, yeah. And you know, Catherine has been one of the people that have also been really helping us out with the book and reading and giving feedback. So Catherine, for all of you who don't know her, she's founding staff member from Singularity University. She's a speaker, a coach, and she's also a member of the engagement committee for Future Earth. Catherine, if you want to say also a few words, and thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I always love the moment when books are being launched and to be able to help with it. Yeah, so I have spent more than a decade helping people become less intimidated by topics such as AI. And as I said in the blurb, nobody insists that you have to be able to build a car before you drive a car, but a lot of times in conversations about AI or similar topics, people feel, and of course, it used to be that you had to have a PhD to truly understand it, and that's just no longer the case. AI has become a commodity product, and as it moves forward, it becomes like electricity, or becomes like computing. And so when we talk about AI, it's really essential for people to know that they should not be intimidated by it, and that they have the ability and responsibility to ask good questions. I mean, yes, the AI itself might be a black box, but decisions about AI have to be explicable. And many times people who are building AI, and I'm in Silicon Valley, I'm a data scientist myself, I know how it is to just like dive right in, and it's very exciting, and you've got your data, and it seems to be working. And so to have those questions, just the simple ones about what do you think is going to happen? What do you think will not happen? When will you know? When will you be able to see? And can you roll things back if they're going in the direction you don't expect? Many times that does not get asked when these projects are being done. And it is the board's responsibility to be able to watch over and check that this is being done. And as I say, I mean, it seems like such a simple thing, but if it isn't, then the decisions about AI and similar projects will be made by a very small group, and important input will be missed. Even being able to say, who are the other people in the company who should provide input to this? It shouldn't just be one small group.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for very, very good input, and for being here with us right now. before we move on, I mean, the book is available already. At the moment, is available in Kobo and is going to be available in more stores within the next few hours. We are going to share with you guys the necessary links, of course, and you have there on your right kind of the index and the structure, but it's pretty much what we have been discussing until now. We really have guiding of AI operational capability and the supervising of AI. And I mean, we're just super happy that we're here, that after this long journey. And I mean, this is just the beginning. So I would like to propose a toast to yeah, let's toast to AI, actually.
So let's toast to AI.
It's to AI.
I would like to also extend the toast here, because I can see that we have here on the call Mats Agervi from Combient, which has been one of the companies that have been involved in the AI in our research. So it would be cool to also toast to Combient. And Mats, I don't know if you are able to say a few words, if you want to share your experience of this research and your experience in Combient.
No, thank you so much, and congratulations to well done work. It's been an interesting discussion and a very important topic for us. As the most maybe know or maybe not know, Combient is a network of almost 30 companies in Finland and Sweden focused on how we together through collaboration can drive digital transformation forward in a faster way than just attacking it alone. And one of the key areas for us is, of course, AI. And I guess what is a little bit different in the way we work in Combient is that we try to work on several levels within the company. So, for example, we have contacts with ownership families, with chairmen, with the CEOs, but also with CXOs, support function or process owners like HR, legal, but also the technical people, data scientists, data engineers. So based on that, we face a lot of a question which you have been describing here today. And the challenge for us helping to drive transformation is, of course, that you need to get each of a group of people to understand their role and how they contribute so they don't become blockers. They should be enablers. But they should not only be enablers, they should also be the people understanding how this will impact their job and ensure that we're going in the right direction. So based on that, I've been very happy by the work which has been done here with the team to help our boards to both govern but also enable the work we do around AI, because it is so important for us. And for me, it's also about understanding what AI is not, because it's so overhyped. And I think AI makes such a big impact if you understand what it is and you deploy it in the right way, and you understand the considerations you have to make as well with the technology. So I think this book will mean a lot to help us within the Combient network to move forward in the AI implementation we have. So I don't have anything to say cheers with, so I just say cheers and thank you so much. I'm happy that I could join you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Brilliant.
And I think it's also, it should be said, Mats, that you are very foresighted to actually work directly with your management level and your boards, and that they are interested in understanding how they are going to be moving forward in such an area. But it was also much from your collaboration that we got that it cannot be technical. If we go down a technical route, we're going to lose the boards. So it has to be areas that even a non-technical part of the board will help guide. So we want to thank you especially for putting us on that track, which helped our work a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
This is the Q&A time. And I have been collecting a couple of questions that have been coming to us here from the chat. And there's a really interesting question, which is early on in the discussion, why focus on AI when boards miss all the digital skills?
Yeah.
Any comments? Why would they even do that if they don't have the competences for the rest? Any thoughts?
Yeah. And I think that in many ways, if you go back and look at the 6 areas that we identified and that Robin described, which was the guidance and the supervise, they're actually as relevant for the entire digital landscape. But there is a difference, and that is that besides the pandemic, the AI is really pushing a lot of these decisions that traditional digital didn't do, especially around the way we innovate, the way we develop business, and also the way that we actually need to govern now in terms of not just our own business, but actually businesses in our ecosystem. Yeah. Robin, do you have a comment as well?
No, I think it's a very relevant question. And I think for us too, as researchers, we want to push the boundaries as well. And there was quite some research and initial research on looking at the digital aspects. And we're not saying that these digital skills should not be focused on, but what we're saying is that we need to also push and be looking forward, saying what are the challenges that are coming faster than we think. And so therefore we need to have some research done at the board level to really understand how will AI be influencing the board so that we're prepared. So we're not saying that, you know, you shouldn't do this either, but it's about creating a shared understanding and awareness of that it's not over with the digital skills. You have to keep moving. It's a continuous moving target. And so we wanted to push that as well, push the agenda on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I have here one more question, if we can squeeze it in, which is where to start? I'm a board member, practicing board member. Where do I start? Any thoughts? I mean, buy our book, step number 1. Second step.
I think so. We've started to share these results before in different communities, and we've had the debate also with the boards where we are. And if you are just selecting 2 areas and you're not on top there, we would say look into how you are collecting data and what you're going to do, because without data your AI will not have that much to chew on. So really take a big look at how do you guide your company for data for the future. And the other area, of course, is going to be around cybersecurity. If you're not on top of your cybersecurity, and you actually don't know if you're guiding. And I mean, I'm quite technical myself, but I learned very quickly that this area, the board needs help in, and you need to find a balance on how to get that help in to support your company, because it will be very fast if it goes wrong.
But I think also it's very much about raising the competence of board members in terms of their understanding of artificial intelligence. So, I mean, jokingly, Fernanda said buy the book, but I think it's also about creating that sense of urgency within each board member to really to come to that as like, okay, I need to better understand what are the implications for my business? What does artificial intelligence mean for the industry? How are other actors in our industry or outside that who could potentially be coming in using this to drive innovation, et cetera? And so I think it's about each and every individual on the board saying, well, what can I do personally? How can I learn about this? You could organize something within the board, but I think it's also, there's so much available material out there, courses on the elements of AI, which is being translated by the Finnish government into every language in the EU, for example. You have tremendous amount of courses on Coursera, on edX, on Khan Academy. I even just go to YouTube and find videos of people and different podcasts. This Week in Machine Learning. There's an excellent podcast from Stanford, Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders, where they interview CEOs of companies which are starting now, which are very much focused on this new way of creating value based on AI. So this week in machine learning is very good for understanding how well-established companies are using artificial intelligence, such as Siemens, et cetera. And then this Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders by Stanford focuses on a lot of startups and how they're just listening to people. How are they thinking about, how are these CEOs, how are they understanding the challenges? What are they doing about, raises each and every individual's awareness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have here from the chat a really interesting comment from Catherine Mironok about kind of learning as you do, right? Like, well, I would say almost like a kid learning how to walk. You kind of have to do it. And that you learn by doing experiments at firm level, and maybe you also need to do that as at the board level. Do you want to say a few words, Catherine? Did I understand your comment right?
Yes, that I think, you know, one of the not the problem, but the nature of exponential technology is that people don't see how quickly a technology can go from being sort of experimental and doesn't quite work right to being something which becomes an industry standard. And so companies do need to start practicing these technologies, including AI, you know, 1 year, 2 year, 4 years before the technology is going to be becoming mature. By the time you wait for it to be a finalized product, it's too late for you to start using it, because you need to have a great deal of practice. You need to have people who are able to judge how well it's going. And similarly, a board must be able to, you know, be walking alongside the team as they're learning. The board should not be waiting until the company is ready to do a full rollout. And so knowing that there's this experimental process, and that these are experiments, and that the nature of experiments, an experiment means you have the possibility of failure, but that's absolutely what you want. If you know that things are going to succeed, you're taking it much too easy on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have here a super interesting comment from Christina, and we have like 4 minutes left, but this is such an interesting comment related to the need for algorithms to be transparent and reviewed, and until what extent we can actually do that. Christina, I see that you're still online. Do you want to pose your question? Or, I mean, you wrote it as a comment, but I thought it was so interesting also that we could bring it up. Do you want to say a few words?
Christina, you might still be unmuted.
Not really working the unmuting, I guess. Or I mean, maybe she's not even available to comment. But I just thought it was an interesting point, this one, related to, okay, it would be great if we could do this transparent and reviewed, but we can't. Oh, Christina is online now. Christina, do you want to pose your comment about transparency of algorithms? It was so interesting.
She says she can't be heard.
Ah, okay, brilliant. But Liselotte, Robin, do you want to comment that?
Unmute, Liselotte, unmute.
So that was one of the discussions we had working with FCG, who works very much with banks, financial services and banks and insurance companies, because they have actually had algorithms for a long time. And part of what they're using it for is very regulated. And then it's regulated in a way that somebody needs to be able to see through that transparency, or actually have transparency through the results. But I think the most interesting thing for us in that is that you need to more put up the process of actually testing your results, but also even know where you're using it. It goes back to that question we had before, because they have been doing this for many years, but they haven't taken that knowledge and moved it over to other areas which is not regulated yet. So I think in that sense, I think most of us needs to both, of course, look at some of the areas, but also be very sure on how we test the outcomes of those, obviously, deep neural results, so that we know what is going on. Because we will ultimately be responsible as board members on that. So I'm a bit concerned about time. Shall we just move on and make a quick conclusion now, and thank our fantastic audience. Our conclusion is really that the first and most important thing is you need to balance the board guidance with the board supervision, as Robin shared with you. And we have identified a couple of areas which you need to govern, but you can take help for each of the areas and you will have questions. And one of the things that we found is that we really hope that this is opening up a lot of boards' view that you need to move a bit quicker towards a bit higher level in terms of what the ambition should be. So Robin, do you want to make a final comment on this?
No, I just want to say that this, I think exactly as you mentioned, it's the balance, and what happens is people tend to go down one direction and forgetting the other, because we tend to, focus on what we like or what's easier. We take the path of least resistance and then leave the other behind. And I think that is a challenge. So one thing is really thinking about dividing up potential, interests and resources among there. We had previously the comment, yes, boards have a lot of internal resources. Yes, you have CIOs as chief data officers, chief digital officers, et cetera. So I think it's very much about just creating this awareness that we need to balance these. How do we ensure that we do this? Perhaps certain people take responsibility for one, while others take the responsibility for something else, so that we make sure that there is this balance.
And Fernanda, do you have a final comment?
Yeah,
we are out of time, so it needs to be short.
Yeah, I was just here reflecting. Something that I've been discussing a lot with other board members is this idea that you, as a board member, you need to have all the answers and then make really fast decisions and get things done. And this attitude of stopping and learning and having that, okay, actually now we need to start experimenting, we need to start learning, we need to start closing knowledge gaps, which is something that, working in innovation, that's kind of what you do. But board members are just not comfortable in that position. And I would really encourage everyone here and everyone out there to feel comfortable with learning, because this is new. We're all on the same boat and we need to make it work.
Very good, and I think that's a very nice way. We're just going to end off with a quote then from one of the participating CEOs, which says, the pace of technology and advancement, the innovation and entry of new place have never been as great as it is today. And there's many inspiring examples of what we can learn from using AI, especially in combination with nature-inspired intelligence. And those who draw the right lessons can gain a strong competitive advantage. So we thought it would be very nice, that's from Christian Benzer, the CEO of FCG Group. We thought it would be nice to end on the positive note that there's a lot of opportunities in here. And I'd
also just like to jump in there, sorry. Yeah. Huge opportunities, not only for competitive advantage, but also for sustainability. Tremendous amount of opportunities there that people often think, but there's so much that can be done by combining, say, artificial intelligence also with other of these emerging technologies, such as drones, whether they're underwater or flying, with 3D printing, with new materials. There's so much potential here. And I think that's really, it's about exploring and testing and experimenting, and not focusing on one, but really saying, if we were to start over with creating, say, value for our customers in our industry, what would we do? How would we start from scratch? And how could we use these new technologies to facilitate this? And that's where you can really start getting some interesting ideas. I just wanted to throw that in, because I think we have to bring the sustainability issue back into focus, and that we have so many possibilities, so many opportunities.
Thank you so much for that, Robin. And that was such a nice way to end up our discussion here. You are more than welcome to look into our website, which is called forboards.ai, and you will find the linkages to the books in there. You will actually still find also the survey if you want to take the survey. And you're also welcome to contact us all in this discussion. And we can't thank you enough for joining us for this book launch. We are very grateful, and we hope that we have inspired some future opportunities for you and your boards. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much all for joining, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Especially those from far away and completely different time zones.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.